You ever just get that feeling that something is off? You know, a kind of general sense of disorientation with where everything's heading? Well, if you have, you are definitely not alone. So today we're going to dig into that feeling. We're going to break down this idea that what we're all sensing isn't just random change, but a quiet, really fundamental shift in how power works.
I mean, just look around, right? Politics seems like it's been turned up to 11. The arguments are nonstop, the volume is just deafening. But when the dust settles, it feels like nothing of real substance actually changes.
And then you've got our technology. It's doing absolutely incredible things, connecting us in ways we couldn't even have imagined. But there's this weird paradox, isn't there, where it can also feel so isolating, making our interactions, even our own decisions, feel a little less, human.
And kind of bubbling underneath all of that is this nagging feeling that the ground beneath our feet just isn't as solid as it used to be. That things like security, stability, even a sense of belonging, they're all becoming more fragile, more conditional.
Okay, so let's dive right into this shared unease. Look, we're always told that every generation feels this way, that they're disoriented by change. But what if this time it's actually different? What if what we're seeing isn't just the usual march of progress, but a deliberate, planned restructuring of our society?
And this is the central question we are going to unpack today. It suggests that this feeling of unease isn't some accident. No, it's a symptom of a whole new philosophy taking root, one that is actively building a future that looks very, very different from the democratic ideals most of us grew up with.
All right, to really understand this new way of thinking, we need to get a handle on one core concept: exit. It's this idea that instead of trying to fix a broken system from within, you just leave it. And believe me, it's an idea that's gaining a lot of traction among some pretty powerful people in tech and finance.
So what is exit, really? Well, traditionally, if you don't like how things are going, you participate, right? You vote, you protest, you work to change things. The philosophy of exit basically says, why bother? It argues that real freedom isn't found in fixing things together. It's in walking away and building your own new, private, optimized systems that operate completely outside of public input or accountability.
And this right here, this really gets to the absolute heart of the matter. The old promise of democracy, and yeah, it was always imperfect, was based on this idea of inherent belonging. You count just because you're a citizen, period. The new pitch? It's totally transactional. It's a service model. Your belonging now depends on what you bring to the table, on whether you qualify. It's a massive shift from we fix it together to the skilled and wealthy can just check out.
But that immediately brings up the most critical question of all, doesn't it? Who actually has the money, the skills, the mobility, the privilege to just pack up and exit a system? Because this isn't a choice that's available to everyone, not even close.
For everybody else, for all the people left behind, the consequence isn't a boot on your neck. It's not that old-school tyranny. It's something much quieter. The system just moves on without you. It leaves you in a structure you had no say in building, with no real way to change it. It is, and this is the key phrase, abandonment by design.
Now, this philosophy isn't just some theory floating around in the ether. It has very real, very practical results. And probably the biggest one is this fundamental redefinition of our role in society. We're shifting from being citizens to being users.
Just look at this breakdown. As a citizen, your status is based on an inherent right. Your relationship to the system is one of participation, and if something goes wrong, your recourse is to appeal, to protest, to demand reform. A user, on the other hand, is qualified based on their value or their utility. Their relationship is with a service provider, and your recourse? Well, if the service doesn't work for you, or, more importantly, if you don't work for the service, the solution is just replacement. You get dropped.
And this is where a tool like artificial intelligence becomes absolutely critical. The real power of AI in this context isn't some sci-fi movie where robots take over. It's much more administrative. Its power is its incredible ability to sort, to categorize, and to evaluate millions of people on a massive scale, making huge decisions that feel neutral and technical, but have deeply human consequences.
So this process is often called the unaccountable algorithm. First, data about you is collected, everything you do. Then, an algorithm sorts you, makes a judgment about you. For a loan, a job, maybe even a place to live. A decision is made. But here's the kicker. Who's accountable if that decision is wrong or biased?
In these automated systems, responsibility just has a way of completely vanishing into thin air.
So what's the end result of all this sorting and exiting? Well, it's the slow erosion of a shared world. I mean, when the powerful can operate under one set of rules and everyone else has to live under another, we stop sharing a common reality. Society starts to fragment, not because of some big violent war, but through the quiet, deliberate architecture of these new systems. So, okay, we've talked about the big systemic shifts, but how does this all actually feel on a personal level? This isn't just an abstract political theory, you know? It has a very real psychological and cultural impact. You could even call it an exhaustion of everything.
In this kind of managed world, control becomes really subtle. If you don't fit the system's metrics, you aren't actively punished. No, instead, your access to things just quietly shrinks. Your options start to narrow. Your voice gets fainter. You are simply deprioritized.
And how do we adapt to this? Well, our whole culture starts to shift inward. Instead of organizing together to change the system, the focus turns to managing ourselves within the system. Wellness culture starts to replace political engagement. We're told to optimize our lives instead of building solidarity with others. And there's this constant pressure to just hustle, upskill, rebrand yourself just to stay relevant.
Ultimately, what this emerging world demands from us is not that we become active participants in shaping our own society. It just wants us to become resilient managers of our own stress. This future doesn't ask you to participate, it asks you to cope.
So after looking at the philosophy behind this, the mechanics of how it works, and the personal cost, we have to land on the most important question of all. This future isn't just happening by accident, it is being designed. And that forces us to ask, who is it being designed for?
And that brings us to this really fundamental choice. Is our role to be active participants in our shared future, to have a real voice in our collective destiny, or do we just become users, passive consumers of services, living inside a world built and controlled by a tiny, select few?
And that's the question we'll leave you with. Who is this really for? Because when power gets embedded deep into code and infrastructure, it becomes incredibly hard to reclaim something that was never really taken by force, but was just quietly engineered away. The most dangerous moment is when we all stop asking this very question, and that moment might just be right now.